Hey, what's up folks? Realtor Chris Hall. Today I want to talk about appraisal waivers. So most likely if you're watching this, maybe it's just out of curiosity, or maybe you're in one of a few situations. Probably the two most common would be you're a buyer that's looking to submit an offer, you're a buyer that's just had your offer accepted, or you're a seller that's received some offers and you're just kind of curious what the heck an appraisal waiver is. So essentially, there's a few different ways we can break this down, but for the sake of this video, we're really going to focus on the top 3 situations where I see appraisal waivers come into play, and then kind of break those down and explain to you what they exactly are. So the first one is going to be an appraisal waiver from the lender. So essentially what that means is your contract is accepted if you're a buyer, and you've submitted it to the lender, and the underwriter puts it in their automated underwriting system, and it pops up and it says, hey, buyer, would you like to waive your appraisal, save yourself $500 to $700? Most buyers nowadays are going to go ahead and say yes. Now we can go into a few reasons why that would take place, but we'll leave that maybe for another video. And essentially it happens when what I see is when buyers are putting about 20 or 25% or more down, and the bank just determines that it's a pretty low risk. And if you buy the home and never make a house payment, the bank could sell the home and be in a really good position. Now let's look at the other 2 scenarios. So that was number 1, is the bank can issue an appraisal waiver, so you don't have to get an appraisal on the home you're buying. And then the other one is an addendum that you're going to attach to your offer. Now this is going to be more the most common ones, and I would think most reasons why people are going to be watching this video. And what that is that's kind of broken into 2 different sections. Oh, I forgot my wedding ring. And this is something I do. It's like a nervous habit. I play with my wedding ring, but I forgot to put it on after working out today. So now I feel naked. So I'm going to have to go get my wedding ring, and I'll be right back. Okay, so now I can sit here and I can doodle with this the whole time and I'll be fine, be able to make this video. So I forget exactly where I was, but I think I was at the part where I was talking about when you submit an offer, you can use an appraisal addendum. It's an actual addendum that you attach to your offer. And that's kind of broke down in a few different sections, or a few different ways you can fill it out. But we're really going to focus on the top 2 for the sake of this video, and that's a partial waiver and a full waiver. So a partial waiver is, let's say that there's a home and you go under contract for $100,000. We're not going to talk about down payment or closing costs or anything like that. Let's just stick with $100,000 to make this video direct and to the point. Let's say on that addendum, the appraisal addendum, you put $90,000. So you've got $90,000 down here. You've got the contract price for $100,000, right? So let's say the home appraisal comes in at $93,000. Well, then you have to bring an additional $7,000 to the closing table. The buyer has to bring that additional $7,000 to make up the difference. That's what a partial waiver means. You're going to make up partially a certain amount that the appraisal would be coming in low at, and you set the number in there. So for this scenario, you did $90,000. On the contract, that's $100,000. Now the other one is going to be the full waiver. Now this one is amazing for sellers. It's the most advantageous one for a seller next to a cash buyer, but it's probably one of the most stressful things to do as a buyer. I would have to say this is really stressful, and then what is more stressful than this would be waiving your option period altogether. But for this one, with this, if you do a full waiver, it means it doesn't matter what the home appraises for, you as a buyer will make up the difference. Now, this is where I really want to dive into this, because I've had quite a few conversations really in the past, I would say month and a half, with people that really didn't understand how this worked. And the reason I'm doing this video is I just had a conversation yesterday with an individual. It was a buyer working with another agent, maybe not for much longer, but they had no idea this is how it happened. And the reason why I want to explain this to you is I don't want you as a buyer to write a check that you can't cash. You know, the old saying, don't write a check your ass can't cash. That's what some of these buyers, I think, are going to do if they're put in a bad position. So let's break this down. So a full waiver means that if the home appraised, well, here, I'll just walk you through the story. And I do have to be careful how I explain stuff because I'm not an attorney, all right? I'm a real estate agent. So basically think of this as like the bro science version of understanding real estate. So let's say you have a property, it's listed for $500,000, right? So the property's listed for $500,000. The buyer loves the home. It's got a pool, all kinds of fancy upgrades, and the buyer offers $550,000, okay? So The buyer, though, has to put 20% down to qualify for this mortgage. So it's really important. The buyer has to put 20% down for this story to make sense. So that's $110,000. So we've got $100,000 was the list, $550 was the contract price. Buyer has to put 20% down. And let's just say they do the full appraisal waiver and the appraisal comes in at $475. Well, some folks are going to think that the buyer's okay because they're only financing $440,000, right? That should make sense. The appraisal came in at $475. You're financing $440. Wrong. That's not how it works. Remember, that buyer has to put 20% down to qualify for the loan. Maybe that buyer wants to put down 20% so they don't have to pay PMI. I understand you could pay PMI up front. Just roll with me. I'm trying to explain this here. So $500,000, $550 is the contract price, full waiver, home appraises for $475, and now the buyer has to bring, what would that be? What's the math on that? That's $75,000. Sorry, I'm looking off into space because I'm thinking about the numbers. So that's $75,000. So that's $185,000 now that the buyer has to bring to the closing table. So that's what I'm trying to explain to you. You need to understand it's not the appraised amount does not necessarily reflect the contract price to the down payment, the finance price, right? So if you want to put 20% down on a $550,000 home, and in this scenario, the appraisal comes in at $475, then the buyer has to make up that $75,000 difference on top of their 20% down payment, on top of their closing costs and all that fun stuff. So really keep that in mind. So personally, I don't advise my clients to do a full waiver unless they're doing about 35% or 40 or even 50%. And then on the other side of that coin, I also try to run numbers on any particular properties. And I try to determine that there is what the market will fetch, meaning what a buyer will potentially pay for the home, and also what the home will appraise for. And right now in today's market, I'm noticing that a lot of these appraisals are lagging because of the low inventory. So sometimes we're looking at comps that are 3-4 months old. And so that gives me a determination of, okay, this is what homes were selling for in the past. Appraiser's going to make a little adjustment. Here's our contract price. I think this home might appraise right around in here. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, are you okay coming out of pocket potentially $100,000 to $50,000 on top of all your closing costs and down payment? If the buyer says no, then I say, well, then we shouldn't do a full waiver. We should only do partials. Now, there's some more that we can go into it for strategies, but I'll probably leave that in my pocket for my clients. But just understand that if you do a full waiver, you've got the potential to have to bring a lot more money to the closing table. And I just want people to really understand that so you don't put yourself in a bad position. So that's the end of the video, folks. I hope it was helpful. Until next time, have a good day.